Today, we are jumping into one of the most epic stories ever told. Seriously, it's a story about enslavement and freedom, about a tyrant who literally thought he was a god, and the one man sent to tell him he was wrong. This is the incredible story of Moses.
To really get this story, you have to start with the pain. This wasn't just hard work. This was about stripping people of their humanity. Think about this quote. There was a time when the beatings were at least predictable. You rested, you slowed down, you got hit. But things had gotten so twisted, so cruel, that the violence was now just random. For no reason at all. The soul of an entire nation was being crushed.
And at the center of his whole empire of suffering, you had two key figures, two pillars of sheer arrogance. First, there was Pharaoh, the guy with absolute political and spiritual power. And then you had his ally, Qarun, a man so rich it was the stuff of legends. These two, together, had it all locked down. So Pharaoh's power trip was on a whole other level. He didn't just tell people he was a king, he told them he was their god. Meanwhile, Qarun's power was all about money. When people suggested he should maybe, help the poor, he just laughed. He was convinced every single piece of gold he had was because of his own unique genius. One guy controlled your soul, the other controlled your wallet, and both of them were completely blinded by their own pride.
You don't even have to guess what was going on in their heads. Their own words say it all. When Pharaoh asks, "Am I not your god?" It's not a real question, right? It's a threat. It's a demand. And Qarun's boast, "This is all for my own knowledge." That's him spitting in the face of faith, of community, of anything bigger than his own ego. In their minds, they were the ones running the universe.
But here comes the first crack in that perfect foundation of power. In a really dramatic moment, the story goes that the ground itself just opens up and swallows Qarun, his palace, and all his treasure. Gone. It was this terrifying sign that, hey, maybe all the gold in the world can't save you. And it was also a little bit of foreshadowing for what was waiting for Pharaoh.
So into this world of absolute tyranny and total despair steps our hero, Moses. And he doesn't show up with an army or a crown, he shows up with just a message. He's here to challenge the most powerful man on the planet and to finally give a voice to people who had been silenced for centuries.
And his mission statement, it was crystal clear. He wasn't there for his own glory. His whole purpose, as he laid it out, was to be a messenger, to tell people there was a higher power and to lead his people out of the darkness of slavery and into the light of freedom. Simple as that.
But here's the thing. His first big battle wasn't even with Pharaoh. It was with his own people. They were beaten down, they were skeptical. His enemies, like Qarun, tried to smear his name, even hiring a woman to make up a false story about him. But when she actually stood before Moses, something shifted. She confessed the whole plot and ended up becoming one of his biggest supporters. He had to win over hearts and minds before he could ever hope to win their freedom.
All right, so with the people slowly starting to believe, the main event begins. The showdown with Pharaoh. And this wasn't just a one-and-done thing. Oh no, this was a long, frustrating psychological game, a series of plagues that kept putting Pharaoh's ego and his promises to the test.
And it falls into this insane predictable pattern every single time. A new plague would hit. The river turns to blood, then swarms of frogs, then lice, then locusts that eat everything. And each time a terrified Pharaoh calls for Moses, begging him, "Please ask your God to make this stop. I swear I'll let your people go." And every single time Moses would pray, the plague would stop, and the second things were back to normal, Pharaoh would say, "Yeah, never mind."
And this wasn't just them going in circles. With every single broken promise, Pharaoh's heart got a little harder. The situation got a little more intense, and the whole nation, both Egyptians and the enslaved, was being pushed closer and closer to a total catastrophe. The pressure was just building and building. Finally, the breaking point arrives. The command comes, stop waiting for permission. It's time to leave. And this kicks off the final act of the story, a mad dash for freedom, with the entire army of an empire chasing them down.
So get this. Pharaoh gives them permission to leave for what he thinks is just a 3-day festival. But under the cover of night, an entire nation packs up what they can carry and just walks out. For the first time in generations, they aren't marching as slaves, they're marching towards a future.
But you can just imagine the moment Pharaoh realizes this isn't a temporary trip, it's a full-on escape. His humiliation just boils over into pure rage. He feels like he's been played, his power completely defied, and the order goes out. Get the entire army. The hunt is on.
I mean, let's just be real about the odds here. It is an absolute mismatch. On one side, you've got hundreds of thousands of men, women, and kids on foot, totally exhausted and scared out of their minds. And on the other side, the most powerful army in the world, with chariots, professional soldiers, all led by a guy who thinks he's a living god. The odds are just impossible.
And then, the moment comes where all hope seems to die. They reach the Red Sea. It's a dead end, a giant body of water. And behind them, they can see the dust clouds from Pharaoh's army getting closer and closer. They are completely and totally trapped. The people just lose it. They scream at Moses, their hope curdling into pure terror. This isn't freedom. This looks like a trap.
So this is it, right? This has to be the end of the line. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. It really seems like this incredible journey for freedom is about to end in a bloodbath before it's even truly begun.
But where human plans fail, the story takes its most legendary turn. What happens next isn't a battle. It's a miracle. And it's the final, decisive reckoning for the tyrant hot on their heels.
While his people are in a full-blown panic, Moses is somehow calm. His response isn't fear, it's this absolute conviction. He doesn't say how they'll be saved, he just says that they will be.
And the command he receives from God isn't some complex military strategy, it's an act of faith. It's simple, direct, and sounds completely insane. Strike the sea with your staff.
And then the impossible happens. The sea literally parts. A dry path opens up right through the middle of the water with these massive walls of water standing on either side. They walk across the ocean floor from certain death on one side to the shores of safety on the other.
But what about Pharaoh? Blinded by his rage and arrogance, he charges right into that path after them. It's only when the walls of water start to come crashing down that he finally gets it. In his very last moments, he cries out, "I believe in the God of Moses." But it's too little, too late. The sea collapses and the entire Egyptian army is wiped out. And on the other shore, the people stand and watch, finally, truly free. And that kind of leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? What do we make of this story today? Whether you see it as literal history, a foundational myth, or a powerful metaphor, its core message still rings so true thousands of years later, that no tyrant reigns forever, that faith can be more powerful than armies, and that the desire for freedom, well, that's one of the most powerful forces in the human story.